I'm too wavy for that. All these other rappers beefing, I'm too wavy for that. Don't you let me catch you sleeping, I'm too wavy for that. I can't party on the weekend, I'm too wavy for that, man. I'm too
way too wavy. Have y'all seen me lately? The drip so crazy, fuck y'all pay me, bitch. I do this daily.
We don't ask for a lot here at TVSins. I mean, if there's one thing people say about us, it's that we're super easygoing and considerate. But do you really expect us not to mention how unevenly you're wearing these fucking bracelets right now?
Look, I don't have time for Aaron's ADHD criticisms of a show that he's incapable of genuinely criticizing. I'm not a person of unending patience.
This show makes it seem so easy to make a glass sing like this, but every time I try to do it, I just get wet fingers. Why is rimming so hard?
This sin only exists so that they could make a rimming joke that nobody laughed at. Seriously, did they think this was funny?
Glass souls. Also taking your love of Annie Lennox many literal steps too far.
This is the part of the video where the narrator just says some random shit that's in or is about the episode and counts it as a sin, because they want to make their video longer. In other words, stop wasting my time.
I'll take it over a previously on, but after this intro, I'm seriously going to struggle to concentrate on anything other than Ethan Hawke's feet.
Discount Jeremy sins something he likes cliche.
I mean, he'd love to get out there, but it's a bit hard with one fin, isn't it?
Yes, because the world is rife with fully finned fish jumping free of their perspex prisons and living their best lives for approximately 30 seconds until they drown in oxygen.
Okay, I can already tell that it's going to be one of those videos where Discount Jeremy takes everything too literally and says a bunch of random stuff to pad the sin count, and I'm not in the mood for that right now.
Still selling the old brushes and brooms, right? Right in front of my entrance.
Well, yeah, because you refuse to acknowledge that he also sells a single rake. No wonder the guy never leaves.
Discount Jeremy makes a shitty dad joke cliche.
Also, let's go ahead and address the Dick Van Dyke-shaped elephant in the room that's Oscar's British accent. Sure, it might be a purposeful character thing, but I've heard some people say it's good, and I've heard some people say it's bad.
So he admits that it could be a purposeful character thing, but then sins it anyway? Does anyone else see why that's dumb?
If this is some weird audition to tour guide here, the answer's still no.
Right, because who'd want a tour guide that knows what they're talking about? Tour guides just need to be able to know how to point the way to the gift shop and completely ignore my question about if Impressionists were sellouts, because they only did it for the Monet. Everyone knows this.
Honestly, I'm already annoyed and bored with this video. First, he made another crappy dad joke about Monet, and second, he's suggesting that the museum staff should promote Steven just because he knows what he's talking about, when in reality, the world is a lot more difficult than that.
Not telling the couple whose picture you're taking about the terrible backlighting problem in the shot.
Yet again, Discount Jeremy says something random about the episode in order to get a forced sin, which is very annoying.
Obviously can't have ankle restraints on a bed, can I? That's the definition of a red flag, isn't it?
I mean, it's kind of a gray area, actually.
Discount Jeremy makes a pop culture reference that isn't a sin of the episode cliche.
Presumably, the tape's there to show if Mark left his apartment in his sleep. But if Sleep Steven has the awareness to unbolt the door and walk somewhere, wouldn't it be safe to assume that he also has the awareness to retape the door and replace any displaced sand?
Unsurprisingly, you're completely missing the point. If Steven sleepwalks out of the flat, he will have the awareness to remove the bolts and tape, but the show is suggesting that he won't have the awareness to put anything back after.
Surrender the body to Mark.
My name is not Mark in this scene.
Discount Jeremy has a boner.
Don't just stand there. Run!
Moon Knight venoms so hard that I'm half expecting Oscar Isaac to find a lobster tank to climb into any second now.
Discount Jeremy makes a pop culture reference that isn't a sin of the episode cliche.
When someone tells me they don't believe we're living in a simulation, I think I should just tell them that both Oscar Isaac and Ethan Hawke are in the same Marvel TV show. There is not a believable world where this seems possible. So I'm sending whoever wrote this simulation for making it a little too obvious.
What the actual fuck is this sin? It makes absolutely no sense. I mean, I guess he was trying to make a joke about living in a simulation, but it sure as hell wasn't funny, and now I'm just confused.
Let the scales see everything. Perhaps it's something that lies ahead.
As the Dead for Know It Society here, Minority reports this poor woman, I have to ask two questions. First, why would anyone volunteer to do this when the outcome is at best being told you have a good person's face and the other choice is to die on the spot for crimes you may not have even committed yet? And two, how great was that Dead for Know It Society joke?
First things first, the joke sucked. But secondly, and more importantly, the show makes it clear that these people are all followers of a Met, meaning that they are willing to be judged because they believe that it's the righteous thing to do. A channel called TVSins has somehow never heard of religion before.
Dear God, did he just turn that lady into a raisin? My childhood fear of the Raisin Bran Sun mascot turning people into raisins is flooding back into my mind.
I'm still waiting for him to explain why that's a sin. Oh, he's not going to? Okay.
I'm a meat! Oh, bollocks.
Funny, yes, but what about the guy who's still standing as Steven kneels? How do you know it wasn't him?
How is it possible for them to play a clip where Steven has a different reaction to the command than everybody else, and yet they still don't understand how he was caught? The other guy simply knelt slower. He didn't have the same confused and surprised reaction as Steven did.
I'm trying to get back home, back to London. London.
If you were trying to find your way home, don't you think you'd be moving away from the crowd or running down the street to get yourself away from the bad guys?
But Steven didn't know these guys were the bad guys at first, and he was simply curious, which is a totally natural thing to feel.
So strange.
Moon Knight upgrades so hard that I'm half expecting Oscar Isaac to find a kitchen knife and bifurcate someone's face with it.
Discount Jeremy makes a pop culture reference that isn't a sin of the episode cliche.
Being 6 people bloody in front of a child. Do you think Mark looked back at the kid and said, "Want to see something cool," before spiking the skull of a goon onto the cobblestone right in front of her eyes? I mean, if we're destroying innocence, we might as well be thorough.
Why does any of this matter? I mean, do you guys understand what I'm saying when I talk about how they just randomly say something about the episode and call it a sin? This shit is weird, and it's not funny.
Jeez, Marvel, you cut that action scene to death so much that I have no clue what even happened here.
Okay, so he's making a joke in this sin because of the fact that the scene wasn't shown in order to represent Steven's confusion, but I'm still sinning it because I can never be 100% sure that that was the intention or if he actually believes what he just said.
God.
Steven's immediate reaction isn't, "Core blimey, Gov, what happened to me old meat hook?"
A whole bunch of bullshit.
Isn't there some sort of horror movie where there's this log truck that resulted in a bunch of deaths? Can't remember what it was called, but I'm just saying this episode keeps emulating movie after movie, and I'm just wondering what the final destination is for all these ripoffs.
Just because something similar happened in another movie doesn't mean that this show is ripping it off. That's an amateur view that has zero credibility.
Just a note on human psychology. If you were to pass out and wake up driving a vehicle backward, you wouldn't have time to process that consciously before your brain had already instantly been overwhelmed and shut down your motor functions. My point is, this moment would not result in an adjustment period. It would result in a Steven is instantly dead and mangled at the bottom of a ravine period.
But the episode shows us that the road they're on is relatively straight during this stretch, so Steven doesn't actually need to turn the wheel that much to stay on. Add that to the fact that Mark presumably had the wheel turned already to compensate for the slight curve of the road, and this sin is invalid.
Deus Ex Machina.
Nope, you still don't know what the term Deus Ex Machina means.
Steven wakes up here and is eventually relieved to learn it was all a dream. Except it wasn't a dream at all. So where did the injury on Steven's hand go? And why isn't his jaw causing him all sorts of Michael Caine?
The injury on his hand was not an injury on his hand. The blood was actually from the dudes he had just killed. And as for his jaw, the scene where that happened showed us that it got reset. So stop manipulating the show to force dumb sins out of it.
There's no way he spotted that fish was a discount Gus from that distance as it was swimming around the tank. You think you can do these things, but you just can't, Steve-O.
But the episode just showed you that he did. Why are you contradicting the show?
Today, what do you see?
I see two.
2 fins. Yeah, sorry.
Show completely ignores the caudal, pectoral, dorsal, and anal fins. That's right, goldfish have anal fins.
And this sin only exists to make an anal joke, which was just about as funny as getting soap in my eyes.
Unpeck phone control. For the love of efficiency, people, the Verizon gods gave you thumbs for a reason. Use them.
And we're yet again just pointing things out and calling them sins because the sins writers think having a character do something that real people do in real life is a sin simply because they don't do it.
I ate steak by myself, thanks. 2 days ago.
If Steven hasn't been in touch with unnamed love interest, how did he even know where to go for the date? Was best steakhouse in town really enough to go on?
Yes, according to what the episode has shown you. Why are you asking questions with answers that are evident in the episode itself?
Also, does she not have his number? Does he not have a single voicemail or pissed off message from her?
The show doesn't tell us whether he has any voicemails from her or not. We can only speculate about that. However, what we do know is that Steven thought he was going to be late to the date and was rushing to get ready, so we can safely speculate that he simply never saw her voicemails.
I'll put you for well done.
Okay, all they do here is play that clip and then add a bunch of sins with no justification. What the hell?
Scene does not contain a...
Yet another pop culture reference.
What is with this accent?
Right? Ironic that being knighted makes you lose your English accent.
A whole bunch of bullshit.
For some inexplicable reason, Steven chooses the slowly descending metal box with only one exit instead of the stairs as his method of escape.
You're missing the fact that Steven is panicking and therefore not thinking clearly.
Also, I wouldn't take this lift even if my life wasn't in danger. This thing looks like it hasn't been touched by an engineer in decades, has witnessed multiple homicides, and is on the CDC short list of locations likely to start the next pandemic.
So you're sending a crappy apartment complex for having a crappy elevator? Why do you have an issue with shows being realistic?
I'm just watching Otter videos again.
Wait, is this all JB does? Steven can't see his screen, so Otter videos seem like a pretty wild guess unless this is something JB is famous for.
Dude, come on. Obviously, this is something JB has done several times before, which is why Steven was able to guess correctly, but he presumably doesn't do it every single day. Use your brain.
Consider this. Had Ahmed been free, she would have prevented Hitler and the destruction he wrought.
Using your powers to stop Hitler cliché.
That's not a cliché.
By even her own avatar.
Avatars. Blue people. Love that film.
By avatar,
You mean
that I mean
anime?
Starting with the blue people instead of the greatest show in the history of Nickelodeon.
This is one of those sins where they just say some random bullshit in order to include a funny scene from the show in their video. It's not a valid sin, it's just annoying.
I saw you kill that woman in the Alps.
It's been 3 days and you still haven't reported this to the law? I mean, not that the police in this universe would believe a story of Discount Kevin Bacon turning people into raisins somewhere in Europe, but it's worth a try.
But the show has made it clear that Steven didn't think those events were real until he saw Amit's avatar on the bus. Stop manipulating the show for sins.
Hello? Donna?
Inspecting the weird noises in your museum when you know weird shit is going down, instead of getting the hell out before the moon night at the museum can begin.
This is another example of Steven being naturally curious, but Discount Jeremy would rather act as if he should know some dangerous shit's about to go down and he should therefore escape.
This metaphysical Egyptian demon ghost dog thing is tricked by throwing a bag, so maybe it's just not all that smart, which makes it hard to care.
But why? It's an animal, which is why it's not smart. But why does that make you not care? It's still a dangerous creature. But the show has made it clear that Steven didn't think those events were real. But the show has made it clear that Steven didn't think those events were real until he saw Amit's avatar on the bus. Fuck! But the show has made it clear that Steven didn't think those events were real until he saw Amit's avatar. Fuck! Not avatar, avatar. You fucking dumbass.
I've been feeling antisocial. I don't give a fuck if I know you. I'm better off alone. No wonder I've been antisocial. Thought I made it clear that I love you. Fuck out my way, you'll leave me alone. Fuck out my face before I lose control. So tell them all that lately I've been feeling antisocial. Better stay away 'cause I told you I'm better off alone. Gotcha.
26 seconds of promotions and the intro.
For all we sin it, Marvel's probably earned this 35-second self-indulgent clip cacophony of logos.
Discount Jeremy sins something he likes cliché.
Based on the last episode, Steven's aware that he's getting up somehow and going places, even with being chained to the bed, so why is he still bothering with it?
Well, maybe he thinks they still help some of the time. He clearly doesn't yet know everything about his situation, so it's entirely possible that he thinks the restraints could still be of some use.
You there?
Of course not. Show only uses the mirror thing when it's convenient for the plot.
Or maybe Mark shows up in mirrors when he actually has something to say to Steven. It's explained later in the show that appearing in mirrors is difficult and uncomfortable, so obviously he's not going to be there 24/7.
Also, who has a mirror on a wall with a door you have to open to get to the mirror? Not saying these types of mirror installments don't exist, but why?
So he admits that they exist, but then sins it anyway? That's stupid.
Do not tell Donna that I let you into this arena.
You mean the arena that's wide open to anyone who strolls by? That arena? This is the surveillance equivalent of having your password for everything be the word password.
Clearly, Steven isn't supposed to be in the security camera room and only authorized personnel are allowed in. You sin the fact that it's wide open, and that is true, but the reason for that is presumably because there are normally staff members nearby who could stop random people from walking in.
What you're about to see is going to melt your brain.
No, what's melting my brain is that you never tell him which camera or a specific time, yet he always finds the correct footage.
But the show literally makes a point of having JB switch between different cameras and wait for something to happen in the footage. Stop manipulating the show for sins.
Like Area 51, like MI6 bonkers, bruv.
Calling people bruh.
Pointing things out on the screen.
So how is this like either of those things Steven mentioned? Steven was chased by the ghost of an Egyptian jackal and gave himself over to the guy living inside his head and turned into a superhero.
Area 51 is of course rumored to have aliens, and MI6 is an intelligence agency. Both of these comparisons actually do make sense.
Here it comes.
Suspect asks someone to look at security video to prove his or her innocence, and it ends up just making them look more guilty, cliché.
Do you walk around calling everything you see a cliché? I mean, you clearly don't know what that word actually means.
What are you doing, you donut?
Thinking calling someone a tasty and delicious treat is an insult. Am I supposed to despise Steven? I want to eat him.
First, that accent was awful. And second, he's yet again just pointing something out in the show and calling it a sin without justification.
Larry in maintenance is going to absolutely shoot you.
Larry in maintenance has a name, asshat. It's Larry. I guess he did say his name and I overreacted. This is awkward. Look, a Cyclops! Desktop water fountains. It's the equivalent of having an open container next to all the equipment on your desk.
Okay, so apparently this video is just gonna be Discount Jeremy complaining about a bunch of random shit that nobody cares about.
This table's had hands on it and mugs and pamphlets slid across it, yet somehow it looks as if the glass is so clean that you can see your reflection in it clearly enough to ponder if your American doppelganger personality might pop out for a bit to say hi.
Are you trying to say that you think glass surfaces need to be pristine in order for your reflection to appear? That's stupid.
Oh, mate, thank you. Oh, thanks. Cheers.
Hugging discounts surely eaten and making them break character when their one job is to stay completely still.
This is another one of those sins that only exists to include a funny moment from the show in their video. It's not funny and it's not a legitimate criticism, so why is it here?
I'm looking for my storage locker. It's under Stephen Grant. If it's not under Stephen Grant, it might be under Mark.
This works.
Of course, I know you. Number 43, right?
And yet, you let him and haw for a full minute before saying anything, because apparently the show still hasn't got enough of the Oscar Isaac limey-timey yet.
So that was a blatant contradiction. You started by saying that Steven's rambling shouldn't have worked, but then immediately after, you sinned the worker for having waited so long. Which is it? Should it not have worked, or should it have worked sooner? I am so confused. Also, he just complained about the show allowing its very talented lead actor to act the shit out of his character, and that's stupid.
This is a terrible lighting system. These lights are apparently motion activated, extremely dim, only stay on for a few seconds while walking by, and make an extremely loud noise each time they turn on or off.
And now we're just sinning lighting systems? If it wasn't obvious that they were reaching for sins to pad the sin count before, it should be now.
And now these metal walls are polished so well they offer a perfect reflection? Look around you right now. How many non-mirror crystal clear reflections of yourself do you see?
In what world is the reflection in this shot perfect? Literally all you have to do is look at the screen to be able to see that the walls are not that clean.
Say you're a compass, but you're not pointing north.
You said, holy f*** nuggets, this scarab is magically floating! Wrong.
This guy got chased by an Egyptian monster last night. A floating scarab isn't gonna surprise him.
Also, what about its floating makes you think it's a compass? I mean, it is a compass, but I think you only know that because you read it in the script.
Or maybe he's just intelligent and was therefore able to figure out that the thing always pointing in a certain direction is a compass.
Hello, man in the mirror. I was wondering if you'd pop up again.
Talking to the man in the mirror. You know, maybe Steven will make a change for once in his life. I hear it feels real good. You can make a difference. You can make it right.
This whole sin is completely pointless. In other words, a whole bunch of bullshit.
I don't care how bloody handsome you are.
He looks just like you. He's more confident than whatever this Pommy needs his mommy routine is, sure, but what a weird thing to say to a person who looks exactly like you.
That's the joke.
Look, Marvel, I don't come to you for genuinely creepy and vibey horror thriller content. I'm here for superheroes cracking jokes and talking about Thanos. So stop it with this well-produced genre shit, okay?
Discount Jeremy sins something he likes cliche.
See the spiral you put me through.
I'd give all the sins back if we find out this movie's in the Saw universe and Chris Rock shows up to work out a routine for his next gig at Caroline's.
So now he's basically just saying random sentences and counting them as sins, and it's not funny or entertaining in any way.
Pop with the accent, please.
From your lips to Khonshu's ears, Layla.
Like I've already explained, the accent is a purposeful character thing, so stop sending something that actually makes sense within the context of the story.
Sorry, I wasn't talking to you.
But Steven knows this is how it will come off, right? This is not the first time he's been caught talking to himself, and he already knows she doesn't believe any of his story about not being Mark.
You're somehow still not understanding how confused Steven is. These first 2 episodes are 100% fish out of the water confusion, but you're failing to recognize that.
No, this is my mum's flat.
Living in your mum's flat as an adult. And if you think that's petty, welcome to the channel. Hope you stick around a while. Occasionally there's a smell of cinnamon buns. It's a candle and not actually cinnamon buns, but it's still really nice.
Okay, first, that whole extended joke was not funny in any way, and it was really just annoying. And second, I find it hilarious how he sinned the fact that Steven is living in his mother's flat when it's revealed later that this isn't true.
She's my favorite poet.
No, she's my favorite.
Jeez, guys, more than one person can love a thing. I knew toxic fandom started with Marceline Desbordes Valmore.
Yes, but maybe she's referring to him having had a different favorite before.
I'll never divorce you.
You just discovered you were married to her, Steven. I know you were worried about the unilateral comment being creepy, but this is way creepier for the record.
Again, Steven is a fish out of water and has no idea what's happening. This shit all makes sense for his character.
If Mark is really trying to get Steven to stop showing her this stuff, why is he doing it from this tiny shaving mirror instead of the glorious fish tank reflection from earlier? And how does she even hear him? I need about 20 minutes of exposition on all the rules of the mirror universe.
He's doing it from this mirror because it's in closer proximity to Steven's body, and he can hear him because all of this is magic. Also, I'd like to point out how earlier you asked if the reflection can pop up in any surface regardless of the body's position in relation to that surface, and this scene right here proves that it can.
You're gonna get her killed. You hear me?
Maybe start with that line of approach next time, Mark, and then Steven never even mentions the bag.
This is one of those sins where Discount Jeremy sins a character for not doing something the perfect way, which is stupid because characters are supposed to be flawed. Having a perfect character would not be interesting.
You really don't remember why we've been looking for this.
No, but I do remember for the last 10 minutes or so, Layla's been insistent on how much she doesn't believe Steven's claims, and now all of a sudden, for no reason, she does.
Oh yes, no reason. Not even the fact that Steven has stuck to the same story this whole time and has actually expanded upon it, and not the fact that he literally cannot remember anything. Yeah, those couldn't be the reasons.
Vandalized the toilet.
Referring to the entirety of the restroom as the toilet, or just simply British people.
That's racist.
What's this? It's a paperweight.
I mean, everything's a paperweight if you try hard enough. Is there any bigger symbol of our own incessant need to commercialize everything that we have a category of items designed to hold down paper?
Why the fuck is this a sin? Are we really just criticizing real-life objects now?
I thought we were going to the police station.
Nope, these two are with Gattaca's Vincent Freeman, who, despite having plentiful resources coming out of his sarcophagus sack, decided to wait 24 hours and then send a couple of lackeys to pick him up, instead of, grabbing him last night.
But he did try to retrieve Steven last night. That's what the whole situation with the Egyptian jackal was. Steven had given control of the body over to Mark, which allowed him to escape, but sending his henchmen after him is a surefire way to keep Steven less suspicious and prevent him from giving Mark the body.
Let's get you out of those cuffs.
That's nice and all, but our hero and his cult going to tend to Steven's concussion as well that he almost certainly got from hitting the pavement when he fell out of that car?
He says this while literally showing a clip of Steven's head never touching the ground. It gets close, but it doesn't actually touch.
That's right, that's why I'm here. To help.
Oh, I see we've reached the part in every modern villain story where the villain tries to convince the protagonist and the audience that they're actually good, even though no one will buy it and they will be proven to be a psychopath shortly thereafter.
So, do you think all villains should be aware of their own evil? What kind of idiocy is that? Most people don't just admit that they're evil, they do evil things because they think it's right.
See, this neighborhood used to have the highest crime rate in all the city. Now, people don't lock their doors at night. They feel safe.
Gentrification.
Oh, Chase, are those the tomatoes?
Overemphasizing the when asking about the tomatoes. They're just tomatoes.
Pointless nitpicking is pointless.
Victor's recipe.
Ignoring the guardrails and sitting on a crumbling artifice.
Pointing things out on the screen.
Don't you do it. Do not give Layla up.
He's been sitting there by this ultra-reflective bowl this whole time, and you wait until Harrow's done his entire bullshit monologue to pipe in?
Maybe he wanted to let Steven see how evil Harrow is before interjecting. It's actually not a bad strategy.
Having that much bread right next to you and not eating any of it. I don't care if it's not vegan-friendly bread. Look at how scrumptious it all is. Eat the bread, Steven.
Do you guys understand why I send them for stuff like this? It isn't legitimate criticism, and it isn't funny, so why is it in the video?
Sometimes the cure is a little taste of the disease.
Bullshit. The cure is the cure. The cure is the solution.
Discount Jeremy has never heard of vaccines.
The child is not a diseased limb.
This is true. Diseased limbs don't cry all the time when they don't get their way, crash a car in a snowstorm because it just had to have fruity pebbles, or force you to take out a second mortgage to get them a 4-year degree in philosophy.
Discount Jeremy supports child murder.
There's the scarab.
I haven't.
What? But why? Why is she here? Why would she bring it even if she thought she needed to save Steven? And did she track his phone here? Did they let him keep it? And how did she get all the way in here without being noticed or stopped or frisked?
Okay, time to explain. She obviously followed him here, she came to save him, she brought the scarab in order to draw the henchmen away from Steven, and she didn't get stopped because she snuck in. Did I cover everything?
I really do love that the show is using Egyptian deities as the antagonist, but could we have gone with a look for Khonshu that was slightly more commanding than a Scooby-Doo villain?
This is what Khonshu looks like in Egyptian mythology, and this is what he looks like in the show. It's pretty much just a creepier version of the original, so what's the problem with that?
So that Jackal's been bumping into that door for the last minute or so and it just opens now? Was he messing with the doorknob, knocking gently?
Jesus, he obviously hit it so many times that the repeated force of its body on the door made it burst open. Enough with the dumb questions.
It's great that the suit helped him survive this, but what helped him survive this?
The fact that he's a normal human? No, seriously, did you honestly think he should have died from that?
I did it! You got planted!
Scene of me finally getting my vegetable garden under control somehow makes it into the episode.
Do you reckon he's having a seizure? Nah, look at him. He's just a fancy drunk.
In what city does being fancy include a latex white head and face covering? Is this the Eyes Wide Shut universe?
Yet again, this sin only exists to include this funny scene in the video.
And also, Bruce Willis and Sybil Shepherd are not making a TV show called Moon Knighting in this scene.
A whole bunch of bullshit.
Sorry. We've always managed to keep a wall between us, but something's changed.
I'm pretty sure the something that has changed is that the story needs Mark to do some shit now.
Or you could just wait for it to be explained in a future episode rather than just sinning it now. But then again, patience isn't really your strong suit.
Pursuing 7 years of bad luck this aggressively. Needing to see the pyramids this aggressively.
Making shitty jokes this aggressively.
Killing this beat off the top of my head, I'ma cut it and freestyle it just like my dress. Sex is a topic when it comes to popping, they mention my name inside all of your threads. We never met, but I'm showing respect. If we did, I would bet we would probably be friends. I don't know if this song is a hit, but if that's the verse, it would do 20 million instead. This is child's play. Rock the beat before I kill it and tuck it in bed. I'm in the front with the gang to my left and my right, got a couple of side men. They cannot erase my pen. I do not break, I bend. I got an L if they call me an L. When I put them together, I win.
Then I found him with the scarab, living 20 minutes from our old place.
I'd give the show some props for finding a new way to do exposition via conversation with the local forger, but why would the forger need this info? And more importantly, why would Layla be telling her? Wait, they're gonna have the forger conveniently be a deep family friend or some shit, aren't they?
First, Discount Jeremy sends exposition that he likes, which is actually a combination of two cliches. Second, you asked why the forger would need to know this and why Layla would be telling her, and those are dumb questions because obviously the forger doesn't actually need to know and Layla was simply venting to her. And third, you should actually look up what the word convenient means before you write your next script, cause you use it incorrectly all the time.
Also, this shot, making me momentarily believe they were shooting this like an episode of The Office all of a sudden.
Discount Jeremy makes a pop culture reference that isn't a sin of the episode cliche.
That's why you look so unhappy to be going home.
While her relationship woes are likely a contributing factor, correlation does not mean causation. I'm just saying maybe she doesn't want to go home because her parents are constantly nagging her about the amount of TV she watches. And maybe it's her job and not just a hobby. And maybe they should just get off my back and let me follow my dreams.
This sin only exists because Discount Jeremy wanted to make that little joke at the end, but the issue is that it wasn't funny in any way and it was just annoying.
This forger's office is littered with proof that it's a, well, forger's office. This forgery of evidence is a great way to build atmosphere for a TV show, but maybe less great when you're an actual forger who might want to keep a low profile.
Aaron, let's think about this for a second. If the forger's home gets raided, how would it make a damn bit of difference for her office to be organized? Do you really think the cops would walk in and be like, oh, yeah, you're good to go, just because some of her shit is hidden? No, that's stupid. And therefore, you're sinning totally inconsequential bullshit.
I don't steal. They've already been stolen.
Got it! You're just like Robin Hood. That was his motto, right? Steal from the rich and keep it for yourself.
Discount Jeremy makes another pop culture reference that isn't a sin of the episode cliche.
Archaeology. One big mess of obsessive bookworms.
Really? According to what I see in the movies and on TV shows, including this one, archaeologists are badass adventurers that'll kick all the bad guy butt.
And why is any of this a sin? Because some movies and shows have archaeologists who are badasses? That's dumb.
Apparently Egyptian passports do specify profession, and I'm just upset my government won't officially recognize me as a pedantic asshole.
I know this sin only exists for the joke, but it wasn't funny, so sin it I shall.
30 seconds of this Marvel property slow go.
Discount Jeremy hates logos cliche.
Looking at this MacGuffin and being confused. It's literally pointing you in the right direction.
Who said anything about Harrow being confused? He just looked at it to verify the direction they should be traveling. Nothing about his facial expression is giving off confused vibes.
Also, it's not like they need to follow roads to Amit's tomb, so why was Scarab Maps ever pointing 90 degrees perpendicular to the destination?
The Scarab has been shown several times throughout the series to have a slight adjustment period after it starts floating, so it obviously rose up and then turned to point in the right direction after.
I have lots of questions about this caravan. If they're following Ethan's Hawkeye, why are they all spread out in the distance instead of lined up behind him? How are these cars just now coming up over this hill? If they have cars and communications, then why didn't just a few of them go on the trip and then signal back after the BPS does its magic?
The cars and people are lined up behind him because they're following him, genius. I mean, I know you have the brain capacity of a 5-year-old, but even 5-year-olds know how to play follow the leader. Also, you asked why they didn't only have a few people go on the trip instead of so many, and that's presumably because Harrow is ensuring their safety through numbers.
Tossing your knife in the air so we know you're an asshole who's oddly prepared to start this fight down a few fingers.
Pointing things out on the screen.
We dancing, we fighting, what are we gonna do?
You're fighting, but one at a time and never in a way that poses any real threat to our protagonist.
Of course, he never shows any of this in the video, but there are actually several instances in which they do attack him together and where he almost gets beaten. This is a clear example of the TVSins people lying to their audience.
I don't know which one of my friends needs to hear this, but if I'm ever in close quarters combat with another individual, please do not literally throw a knife into the situation.
So you're sinning someone for having a realistic reaction in this high-stakes and adrenaline-fueled situation? Seriously, why do you constantly sin shows and movies for being realistic?
This knife licking would have been enough, but considering he's punched in the face mid-lick, this means he saw the punch coming but felt like it was more important to finish licking than protect his face.
Nope, just because your editors slowed down the clip doesn't mean that's the actual speed. This guy obviously didn't have the reaction time to be able to stop what he was doing and parry Mark's punch.
Don't do it, Mark.
And of course the blade is shiny and clean enough for Steven to make an appearance.
Why shouldn't the blade be shiny and relatively clean? It hasn't been used up until this fight, and so far it hasn't punctured anything to make it dirty. My point is that this sin is basically just pointless nitpicking because the Sins writers are really stretching to find stuff to talk about.
Steven, what did you do? I swear it wasn't me.
Okay, fine, but you've been in the knife reflection, right? You saw what happened. Every other time you're in some random reflection, you seem to know what's going on, so why not this time? And honestly, shouldn't both of you be in there if there's a third Moonchild?
Whoa, slow down with the bullshit. Neither of them were present when the third personality took over because neither of them are yet aware of his existence. Therefore, it makes sense that neither of them knows what happened.
Raise on it. Okay.
Then pull him back, you script-fulfilling piece of plot tension. If you had time to say no, kid, in another second before he cut the scarf with a knife, you had time to yank it.
Yes, he did have time, but you're failing to understand the fact that Mark is full of adrenaline and therefore not thinking things through like that.
I didn't do any of this. Me neither.
So neither of them was in control of their body? Seems like an important and concerning development. But I guess Mark and Steven have agreed to table that for another episode.
Right, because they still need to catch Harrow. They have more pressing concerns right now.
Keep digging! No matter what happens, keep digging!
No matter what? What if they hit stone? What if they hit oil and up from the ground comes some bubbling crude? What if you tell them to stop digging?
Jesus, all of these questions are entirely inconsequential because none of them end up happening. It's painfully obvious that they're reaching for sins because they can't find any actual ones.
For a meeting of the Ennead, a portal presents itself anywhere.
That's why we named it the Portal of Ultimate Convenience.
Dude, you're watching a show that features literal Egyptian gods and magic? Everything here is convenient, so stop sinning it.
Aren't you coming with?
Oh, I'll be there.
Writers chose this cryptic non-answer instead of, I will suddenly and without warning possess your body, so stay loose and don't eat any spicy food.
Discount Jeremy is failing to understand Khonshu as a character. He's basically just using Mark. He doesn't actually give a fuck about him, and this is simply another result of that.
Oh my days, we're inside.
Title of my sex tape?
How the hell does he still think he's funny?
Manipulate the sky again, and we will imprison you in stone.
This is a weird and oddly specific place to draw the line, so it's pretty wild that this is the exact thing Khonshu does later in the show.
Or maybe it's something that Khonshu has done before because he's the god of the moon and the moon is in the sky? It doesn't take a genius to figure this out.
We decided long ago we did not wish to meddle in the affairs of man.
Not enough proof, but I'm pretty sure it's written somewhere that all new Marvel properties must include some version of the Prime Directive as a way of explaining where all the characters that could have helped were during the whole Thanos debacle.
But this is one of the instances where it actually makes sense. The gods are being shown to be arrogant and relatively uncaring for their human avatars, so why should they be any more caring for the rest of humanity?
Summon the accused.
I love how gods with unimaginable power still do old school trials when they aren't blocking out the sun or creating insta-portals that know exactly where the other avatars are.
Okay, so how do you propose they do this stuff? Oh, you weren't going to offer an alternative? Cool.
He's a deceiver!
That's it? That's the depth of Khonshu's argument, when earlier he said,
Our case against Harrow must be indisputable.
And you're yet again failing to understand the scene. Khonshu is angry and riled up because of what Harrow is saying, and he's therefore speaking out of pure emotion rather than logic.
I have no idea how many personalities he must possess.
What does that have to do with anything? Just because Khonshu's avatar has mental health issues doesn't mean Khonshu himself is untrustworthy.
Jesus Christ, can you please just try to pay attention when you're watching shit? The show makes a point of saying that Khonshu is taking advantage of Mark through his mental instability.
He has committed no offense. This matter is concluded.
What? Did you even look at any evidence? Do any exploration of the facts?
But earlier in the video, you mentioned how Khonshu failed to offer any actual evidence and was just yelling, but now you're acting as if he has solid proof of Harrow's crimes? Which is it? Is Khonshu really good or really shitty in this scene?
Looking for Senfu's sarcophagus.
See, this is the problem with the gig economy. It's not enough to just be a black market information vendor. You also need a side hustle as a juice broker just to make ends meet.
And why is that a sin? Oh, you're not going to explain? Cool.
Please just let Steven out before you blow this.
Maybe a conversation you should have settled before saying weird things like this in front of your already suspicious host, you think?
It's almost like she said that quietly enough that he didn't hear her for the specific purpose of not arousing his suspicion.
What?
It's legit.
I don't care so much that name-dropping the student walk-in feels a bit like an attempt to establish ancient Egyptian artifact street cred, if there is such a thing, but I do care that the show doesn't at least hint at why this word sounds German.
What the fuck? This sin is so dumb that I don't even think I need to explain.
Do you really think I'm an idiot?
Honestly, no one knows what's going on in the scene right now, let alone what you're thinking. Mark was folding pieces of cloth he found in the sarcophagus before you interrupted, and we had no idea where that was going, so you're holding all the cards, and now would be a great time to enlighten us.
Jesus, you really are stupid. Mark was trying to piece together directions for how to get to Amit's tomb. It's not that difficult to understand.
It appears we have a concerned third party here.
Of course we do. Is this show going for a record number of scenes in which the protagonist and antagonist meet and don't actually confront each other?
But why is this a sin? Harrow always has a reason for showing up wherever Mark is, so it's not as if all of this is pointless. This sin is weird.
Do it. Summon the suit.
Khonshu's completely making sense here, but why does Mark even need to be told this? If you had an ass-kicking invincibility suit at your beck and call, aren't you calling that shit down the second a gun appears?
Maybe it's more difficult than you think. The show shows us that Mark and Steven struggle with summoning the suit, so this sin is disingenuous.
What just happened and how is that helpful? Judging by the fact that this is what my burrito looks like after putting it in for 30 minutes instead of 3, I'm going to assume he just microwaved the sarcophagus to destroy the star map. But if that was the plan, he did a terrible job at it, since they're able to tape it back together later.
Jesus Christ, he obviously was trying to destroy the sarcophagus, but the fact that it's put back together later doesn't mean he did a blatantly terrible job. It just means that he made a simple mistake, which is not a sin of the show, seeing as characters are supposed to be flawed.
Buy me some time.
I can do that. Sometime? You're about to fling the bullet stuck to your cape with enough pinpoint accuracy to take out 8 hinge persons. I think you can just end this thing now and then Layla can take all the time she wants.
Except for the fact that we see Mark struggling with more of the henchmen later, so he obviously can't just end it all now. Why did you keep this sin in the final video if it's proven to be bullshit?
This scene illustrates just how difficult it is to land the double mid-air kick. I applaud the attempt, but you missed that second kick and you'll be penalized accordingly.
I don't know if he was going for a joke here and failed, but either way, I feel like I have to point out how Mark wasn't actually going for a double kick.
Give me the body, Mark!
Equipped only with overconfidence in his ability to handle this life or death situation, Steven interrupts another fight sequence. I think the goal here was comic relief, but I also think it's safe to say that no one is laughing.
That's coming from you? Not only is that hypocritical, but this scene actually was funny, so fuck off.
Let's all just like chill the F out and talk for a second.
Take the body. Take the body, Mark.
That fake-ass laugh.
I've removed my protective face shroud so you can see how seriously I'm calling out your name.
Or maybe he took it off so she could actually hear him. Are you unaware that having a layer of cloth over your mouth muffles your voice?
Taping ancient cloth in the desert.
Pointing things out on the screen.
This was the thing they were having such difficulty reassembling. I've seen children put more complicated puzzles together.
Can you please just pay attention to what the show tells you? It was difficult because of the pattern on the cloth, not the shape.
Well, actually...
Steven just uttered a literal actually, and I'm pretty sure we've got those trademarked by this point, so here's a sin, and you'll be hearing from our lawyers, Disney.
A whole bunch of bullshit.
So, unless we know exactly what the sky looked like on that date...
So the star map only worked on one night? Why the f*** would anyone make a map that only works for one night?
The map was created this way because the ancient Egyptians didn't fully understand how stars work. Over time, stars and other celestial bodies in our sky change their apparent positions because the Earth is moving through space. But since they didn't understand that back then, they didn't account for the change in position of the stars.
I can turn back the night sky.
How?
It will come at a cost.
Let me guess. The cost will be a way to conveniently create plot tension and stakes for the rest of the season?
Again, please look up what the word convenient actually means.
Do what I do.
But do it while standing in front of me and not being able to see me because I'm taller and it will look more cinematic that way.
Discount Jeremy just sinned the show for being visually cinematic.
So let me get this straight. In the mere seconds that Khonshu and Khonshu Jr. have been spinning the night sky, all the other avatars got the message, portaled here, and got set up for this imprisonment spell?
Yes.
Are you unwell?
My dog stepped on a bee. We went to the vet.
I've seen so many previously ons now that I'm genuinely starting to feel emotions like rage and anger. And you know how we process emotions over here at TVSins.
Discount Jeremy hates previously on segments cliche.
I mean, good on the pyramid builders for thinking about the future needs of a tiny god Funko Pop collection in minimalistically appealing oil lamp cubicles.
You do realize that this room in the pyramid was built for this exact purpose, to house the statues of the gods? Seriously, what is the point of this sin?
The Trek drove over the top of the dune this close to Layla and Mark and didn't see them. That's almost as ridiculous as Layla somehow spotting ammunition in the back of the truck as it speeds by at night.
The first part of your sin is contradicted by the second part. You asked how they didn't spot Layla and Steven, but then mentioned how it's nighttime and the visibility is therefore bad. Which is it? Should people be able to see or not?
But whatever you do, make sure you do not check inside the truck, just around, okay? There's no chance she went in there, so don't even bother.
I know you don't understand the most basic tactics, but these guys are on a truck with a mounted machine gun, meaning that they have a massive advantage over Layla while they're on said truck. To search inside the vehicle would require them leaving their advantageous position.
Oh, come on, Marvel. It's not like anyone believes you'd kill off your main character with only a few episodes remaining.
Okay, so this sin is a joke and is partially meant to set up a joke later in the video, but the problem is that it's simply not funny.
The suit was his best feature, wasn't it?
Judging a mark by its cover.
Unfunny joke is unfunny.
This high and mighty goat.
Pointing things out on the screen.
But I guess believing anything that comes out your mouth just shows what a plonker I am.
Steven's calling himself a for believing Mark while simultaneously being Mark. So now there are two plonkers plonking themselves. And what you don't know is this is now evolved to what the British call a Union Jack.
I honestly have no clue what this sin is even supposed to mean, so let's just sin it and move on.
I've been in situations like this before. So have I. It's the same body, isn't it? Muscle memory and that.
Steven is expecting to I still know Kung Fu his way through a small army of machine gunning goons after only yesterday objecting to even being part of any of this.
I see someone hasn't been paying attention. Steven originally objected to taking part in everything, but he came to accept the fact that he had no choice. However, he also doesn't want Mark to be in control because he's afraid of what Mark can and will do.
You smell like him.
I'll take things that sound romantic but are actually pretty f***ing creepy for 2 sins, please.
I'll take discount Jeremy throws in stupid sins that nobody cares about to bloat the runtime and sin count for 1 sin, please.
You're down.
Okay.
First.
Well, yeah. Great.
Before I belay.
Thank you. What's belay?
I still can't tell when you're joking or not.
As a general rule of thumb, anytime you know that the person you are rock climbing / abseiling with is currently presenting with a personality that you've only just met, I'd err on the side of not kidding.
Yup, but this is simply Layla's character. Why do you constantly sin characters for being themselves?
Also, what exactly is she belaying when she gets down there? Unless she's planning on immediately climbing back out, the belaying's done. And it certainly isn't for Steven's benefit, as evidenced by his rather abrupt belayless landing.
Belaying is basically just securing a climbing rope in a position that allows any climbers who fall to not fall very far, which is exactly what Layla did. As for the part about Steven, he was supposed to secure his rope before going down, but he fell before that could happen.
Also, if Layla is lacking this very basic concept, I think it's in Steven's best interest to delay the belay and say, hey, you okay? Before rappelling down and breaking all of the legs.
I get that this sin is meant as a joke, but it's really stupid. He's sinning somebody for not waiting to belay when that person fell on accident.
Are you okay?
He fell from a great height, directly down into a tomb. He should not be aces.
Jesus, obviously he's not. He only said that so she wouldn't worry about him. How do you not understand this very basic concept?
It's amazing.
It's amazing.
Look, let's leave the wordplay to the self-professed experts, shall we?
Discount Jeremy is a hypocrite cliche.
This whole structure, it's a symbol.
Fuck you, dude. I'm not buying for a second that he's already been able to piece together an aerial view of the caves just based on walking through them for a few minutes.
He was able to observe the tomb's shape by physically being inside. What's so unrealistic about that? Seriously, why shouldn't this work?
There are 6 paths.
6 paths seems important when they began to lay out the whole Horus's eye thing, but the symbol of the eye doesn't have 6 intersecting paths. So when they decide on the tongue path, how do they confidently decipher which of the 6 paths represents the tongue?
Hey Aaron, I have a suggestion for you. How about you just shut up and listen to what the show tells you? Maybe your questions will be answered then.
What? You think it's a map?
I mean, to be more accurate, this is a conveniently recalled symbol suddenly drawn on a conveniently reflective table that somehow very quickly became a convenient map.
It's adorable how you still don't know what the word convenient means. None of the things you just said are actual conveniences.
Hexahedcar.
Sorcerers of their time.
Fortunately for us, Steven's knowledge of Egyptology only stretches to the point where we, the audience, need something explaining.
Were you expecting him to know every single thing about ancient Egypt? Obviously his knowledge has limits. He's not fucking omniscient.
Right. You go.
Me.
Unnecessarily splitting the party.
If it were you in the tomb, you'd keep the party together, which could potentially end up being disastrous, seeing as the reason for the split is so that they can scout out the chambers. If both of them went together and it turned out that there were enemies in a certain area, both of them would then be in danger instead of just one of them.
Yes, because the first thing you do after realizing the holes in the wall allow dead arms to jut through is to turn your back on the wall with the holes.
This is a great example of the TVSins people lying to their audience. Layla does not know that the mummy can reach through the walls. She hasn't seen it do that yet, so this sin is disingenuous.
Also, at some point, these, oh no, they died, fake outs are resolved so quickly you're left wondering, why bother? No one believes she actually fell to her death here, and even if we did, we're only allowed to sit with that suspense for like 8 seconds.
So you saw a scene where a character's fate was only in question for a few seconds, but you somehow think it was meant as a fake out? It obviously wasn't a fake out if they didn't spend any time with it.
Oh. You kissed her.
This is what is important to Mark right now. Everyone's in danger and he's feeling the need to start a pissing contest with himself?
Yes. Why are you sinning Mark for being in character? It's stupid.
I think we're looking at the long-lost tomb of Alexander the Great.
Oh. Huh?
How the fuck is this confusing? Do you have the comprehension level of a toddler?
So why don't you just go ahead?
Good thing both these two came mic'd up so they could hear each other speaking very softly across this not insubstantial distance.
Or maybe the chamber is completely silent and therefore their voices can be easily heard.
Floor is yours.
The floor may be Harrow's, but the walls are the mummy killer's walls, so stop leaning on it!
If she's leaning on an unbroken section of the wall, she's totally safe, and that's exactly what she's doing.
Everything inside me is like screaming not to open this thing.
Everything apart from the only actual voice inside him, which is, ironically, telling him to open it.
Discount Jeremy points things out on the screen cliché.
The symbol of a waiter serving a piping hot plate of 3 flaming hot dogs.
Yet more pointing things out on the screen.
So, what do you think?
I think it's super convenient that Alexander was great enough to line his loot in shiny reflective material that allowed this reflective conversation to continue.
Jesus Christ, you could have done at least 5 seconds of research on ancient Egypt before making this video, dude. Rich and powerful Egyptians decked out their tombs and coffins as a symbol of their wealth and power. This isn't convenient, it's realistic.
Talking to you, Mark!
Well, that was easy, for once. But why?
Because Steven and Mark both actually wanted to change places? How do you not get this?
How did he die?
Unless this conversation leads to the revelation that on the night of her father's death, Mark also found a secret exit out of the lost tomb of Alexander the Great, can we please put a pin in it until after they've escaped the angry men with the guns?
This scene is Layla being emotional because of what Harrow said and not thinking clearly as a result. Stop sending realistic character reactions.
Oh, come on, Marvel. It's not like anyone believes you'd actually kill off your main character with only a few episodes remaining.
And this is the joke that they set up earlier in the video. Was it worth it? Didn't think so.
It's pretty clear from this angle that Mark's falling down a flight of stairs before hitting the water. But then he doesn't.
But he actually did fall down the flight of stairs. His trajectory brought him away from the stairs and into the water.
I can't save anyone who won't save themselves.
But he doesn't care about redemption or second chances. His whole deal is stopping people before they even have a chance to redeem themselves, or before they even realize they have something that requires redemption.
His point is that people would not have to die under Ahmed's judgment if they were willing to save themselves from the choices that led to their sins. It makes sense for his character, but you're still incapable of understanding.
You're Dr. Stephen Grant.
Maybe so, but you've got pluck.
Imagine getting the call from Marvel that your cast is Stephen Grant in Moon Knight, and it's this role instead of what we've been seeing the past 3 episodes.
I can imagine it all I want, but it's still not a sin of this episode.
I took the liberty of borrowing the film you brought.
My actual sex tape?
Nope, you still don't know how to make these jokes.
How many times would you say you've seen that movie?
Despite all parental warnings, enough times to make him go blind, apparently.
Why the fuck is this a sin? Yeah, we get it, the screen is blurry, but why is that a mistake of the episode? It was done for a purpose.
Whatever bullshit this sarcophagus says that may or may not be important, but I don't have time to crack the code.
A whole bunch of bullshit.
How is this possible? I don't know.
Me either, but someone left their thermos mug and useless lamp here on this shelf.
Discount Jeremy points things out on the screen cliché.
Pointing like this must take too much effort. Stop it.
Everything wrong with Moon Knight the Tomb, ladies and gentlemen. Mark's pointing takes effort.
Mark just found Steven in a sarcophagus and it was a pretty great reunion. Why would he pass up another one? Is it because the third personality inside isn't crying for help?
He doesn't want to open the third sarcophagus because he doesn't yet know that there's a third personality inside him, and he's obviously confused and therefore hesitant.
Also, Marvel did not release all 6 episodes at once, forcing me to spend far too much time in the deep dark holes of the Egyptian Lady Hippo subreddits.
That may have been meant as a joke, but it wasn't funny and it was stupid, so sin it I shall.
He's tethered to this place.
But not the actual place, right? The Ashanti can leave the pyramid and still serve its prisonary function, as we saw last episode and right here on the previously awnings.
His point is that it can only be broken inside the pyramid, meaning that the trapped gods can only be released within said pyramid.
Opening an episode on falling water. Now I just have to pee, Moon Knight. Is an out-of-nowhere need to urinate really how you want to start your episode? Is it?
Did anyone actually find this joke funny? Yeah, that's what I thought.
Your mind is violently vacillating between sense and nonsense.
An accurate description of me trying to make sense of this plot.
Just because you're an idiot doesn't mean the show deserves a sin.
Speaking of violent vacillation, this scene cuts to a wide shot and a close-up shot back and forth 10 times. Stop it.
This is called keeping the audience interested. If they remained in the exact same angle for the entire scene, it would be visually boring. You would think a channel that criticizes TV shows for a living would understand that.
You're not really a doctor.
And you're really not Mark or Steven, are you? Huh? Strange third man with a broken nose. Okay, yes, maybe I saw a few spoilers before watching this episode, and I may be playing up that the visualization could or could not be Mark's other super dangerous personality.
And why is any of this a sin? Oh, you're not going to explain? Well, alrighty then.
I feel real. I feel like a real doctor.
I don't see a bowl of suckers on your desk that Mark can choose from after he proves to be a good patient, so how real of a doctor could you really be, Hero?
Unfunny joke is unfunny.
What I find extremely interesting is this new, the new animal character.
What I find extremely interesting is how Hero has a functioning backside with that terrible posture.
Dude, nobody cares. This is what I mean when I say that the Sins writers have gone way downhill. They say shit like that all the time, and it's not funny or interesting in any way.
You think you could tell me about that little boy?
Gird your emotional loins, folks. Moon Knight is about to hard shift out of Egyptian deity shenanigans and plow right into the depths of a tragic backstory involving way more than I thought I was going to get into. And yeah, I know I said the thing earlier about it being interesting, how the show handled the subject of abuse, but like Mark, I'm a complicated being.
No, you're actually very simple because you're an idiot.
So are you two like twins?
Why is the goddess of whatever confused by this? Wouldn't she be able to sense if this were two people?
The episode is clearly showing us right now that she can't, so the answer to your question is obviously no.
It's been a minute since we've had a soul pass through here.
Oh, so now they're a soul and clearly not twins. But also, why has it been long enough that she's forgotten her whatever scroll? I know I read about her, but none of that really helped much for this moment.
First, just because she said a soul doesn't mean she knows they're not twins. That's just the way she was referring to the lack of soul passage. It wasn't specific to Mark and Steven. And second, she forgot her scroll because of what she just said, that they haven't had a soul pass through in a long time. Pay attention.
Welcome, gentle travelers.
I'm not being welcomed by a walking and talking hippopotamus in this scene.
The real sin is that you're not shutting up in this scene.
What is this? Unseen footage from Pirates of the Caribbean?
Discount Jeremy makes a pop culture reference that isn't the sin of the episode cliche.
I'm not crazy. I'm dead.
Being this thankful that you're dead.
Pointing things out on the screen.
It was little old me worrying I'd blow your chest wide open.
Why was she worried about this? I don't know how the Egyptian underworld rotation shifts work, but I'm willing to bet all my sins that Tawerit has had to do this before.
But like she just said, she hasn't done this in a really long time, meaning that she's forgotten the specifics of a lot of the steps.
A couple of questions. First, if they're treating Mark and Steven as if they're two separate entities, then why doesn't each heart get to be weighed by itself? When Harrow was f***ing around with his staff in earlier episodes, that was just one person at a time. And second, if Steven is just part of Mark and not an actual person, then how does he have an actual heart? I get that we're not supposed to know Steven is a personality Mark created when he was younger, but the f***ing Egyptian underworld should know this. They're gods. Why would a god need a scale of justice? Oh, sorry, Star Trek 5 there for a second. At least I didn't fully Star Trek 5. You never want to fully Star Trek 5.
Alright, they're treating Mark and Steven as two separate people because Mark is only his complete self when you factor in his other personalities, which include not only Steven but also Jake Lockley. Also, Steven has a heart because all of this is going on in his head. As the episode explains later, it all comes down to his perspective. Also, you mentioned how the Egyptian gods should be aware of Mark's situation, when in reality we've been shown time and again throughout the series that the gods are not omniscient. And finally, Discount Jeremy makes a pop culture reference that isn't a sin of the episode cliche.
No unbalanced souls on my boat. Them's the rules.
Are you sure about that, to wear it? Because as confused as you've been this whole time, I have about as much faith in your knowledge of the Egyptian underworld as I do of TVSins' knowledge of mature discourse and restraint.
Guys, are they admitting that they suck? Wow.
I do not have a card for this. It's the hearts.
Hippo's like, I don't know what's happening to. Let's go with your hearts need help in 0 seconds flat.
Yes, because those things work together. She knows the issue is with the hearts because typically a heart will either balance with the feather or be heavier than the feather, but Mark and Steven's hearts keep moving. Therefore, she knows that there is an issue with the hearts, but she doesn't know exactly what it is.
Also, I'm pretty sure you do have a card for this, to wear it. You said if the hearts don't balance with the feather, then Mark and Steven are thrown overboard. They're not balancing, so that should be it. But Mark and Steven will get a chance to make them balance because... reasons?
Again, you're misunderstanding this. Typically, a heart will either be heavier or the same as the feather, but Mark and Steven's hearts are neither, meaning that she has no idea what to do because it's never happened before.
Like they each feel incomplete.
The hearts are incomplete because the multiple personalities aren't united, but the show never addresses how any of the sudden balancing works when there's an entire third personality no one's even talking about.
The implication is that Mark and Steven have to share things with each other that they already know, but the other personality doesn't yet know. Seeing as neither of them know about Jake Lockley, they don't need to discover him for the hearts to balance.
That's wild.
That's a previously on during the show, and you cannot fool me.
Discount Jeremy hates previously on segments cliche.
Just a creepy calf filled with dead bodies.
Shortening the word cafe to calf.
Pointing things out on the screen.
Also, for all of you that think The Walking Dead's biggest issue is that it's boring, Moon Knight gives you an alternative with The Sitting Dead, and honestly, feels about the same.
Yet another pop culture reference.
This is all your fault!
I would hope that all the adults in this room realize that the mother needed some help to process the grief of her dead son, but nope.
But how do you know that doesn't happen? We're never really shown what the others do to help, we're only shown that the mother never improves. So it's just as likely that she received help, but that it never actually did anything for her.
Before, they were having to walk down the hallway and open doors to get to each memory, but now Mark can just tackle Steven into another memory, and blah, 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 these are memories, none of this is real, etc. But the episode sets up some pretty clear guidelines on how Mark and Steven can navigate this terrain, and then just throws it out the window when it needs to.
Yes, because like you said, none of this is real, it's all in Mark's head, so the supposed guidelines don't actually matter.
I am the god Khonshu.
I know Mark is dealing with a lot of stuff at this moment, but I still want to point out that he accepts this is an actual Egyptian god talking to him way too quickly.
Mark is extremely close to death in this scene, meaning that he's obviously not thinking clearly and he's confused and scared. Add that to the fact that he's already mentally unstable, and this actually kind of makes sense.
You are a worthy candidate to serve me during this time.
Khonshu is really starting to feel like a discount Jigsaw the more we learn about his origins with Mark.
And that's another pop culture reference.
Do you swear to protect the travelers of the night?
Khonshu says travelers and not shadows, but I'm still going to issue a scene does not contain Alison Pill singing Pat Benatar sin. Because honestly, now that Star Trek Picard has put that in our lives, really should be in every TV show for all the rest of time.
A whole bunch of bullshit.
Also, what does that mean exactly? Are people only eligible for protection while traveling and only at night? Why is there never any time to talk about the fine print?
Okay, Khonshu is the god of the moon, and the moon is most prominent at night. So, do you see the connection yet?
Get those scales balanced!
There's a lot of interesting subject matter being addressed in this episode, and there are a lot of fun Egyptian underworld shenanigans as well. However, this scales balancing MacGuffin that takes up too much of the running time never makes a lot of sense and only leads to a death that is not really a death, which was already a death that wasn't really a death.
This whole sin is one long complaint based around the fact that he's too stupid to understand what's happening, and that's his fault, not the show's.
Bloody hell. Look at the state of this place.
This show can try to rationalize Steven's terrible accent all it wants, but it's still a terrible accent that we have to listen to for 5 episodes and counting, so you're still getting a sin, Moon Knight.
So he realizes his mistake, and what does he do? He just goes right ahead and gives another sin to save face. That's what we call a bitch, ladies and gentlemen.
All this time I thought I was the original.
Wait, did people really think there was a chance Steven was the original? Was this supposed to be some sort of twist?
No, because like he just said, he thought he was the original, not the audience.
You've gotten to live thinking that she loved you, that she was kind, that she's still alive.
Trying to wrap my head around the logistics for all of this to unfold is making me feel like I've lost my mind. So Steven is a personality that Mark created to escape his horrible abusive life. And at some point after Mark became Moon Knight, the Steven personality was able to take control for the majority of the time. Fine. But he was able to get a job in an apartment as Steven? How did he even have the correct paperwork and identification for Steven Grant to get all these things accomplished? Steven Grant doesn't exist and doesn't have a social security number. How would any of this work?
Did you hear the way he pronounced social security? Social security? Also, it's not called a social security number in England. It's called the national insurance number. Took me all of 5 seconds to Google that, bud. Also, Mark was presumably able to get something along the lines of an indefinite leave to remain under the name Steven Grant, which is how people not from the UK can live permanently there.
She's alive. I speak to her every day.
So it's not just that Mark made Steven, but Steven is also mentally designed to never experience confusion about why someone doesn't talk back to them on the phone. Got it. I'll just file this with things that the mind can do that are scary as which is right beside things a show won't explore more in order to avoid having to explain itself.
But you just admitted that the mind can do some seriously scary shit, which is the explanation that the show implies. All of this is a part of Mark's mental instability, and it's actually very believable.
No haircut, no silly tash there. It's very Ned Flanders.
We get it, Disney. You own The Simpsons now. We're all so proud.
Did he think this joke was funny? 'Cause if so, that's a problem.
It didn't know you smashed it on the ground a moment ago. You don't have to say you're sorry to the hat.
I'll refer you to the previous sin.
The scales are balanced.
So only one of at least 3 personalities had to die for the scales to balance. That checks out, I guess.
As I already explained, Mark is not yet aware that Jake Lockley exists, meaning that Jake is not a part of his conscious mind and, by extension, the underworld.
I've got it! The previously ons will stop once Marvel's wasted a collective 5 years of my life, giving me a greater appreciation for those who lived through the blip.
Discount Jeremy hates previously on segments cliche.
Why do TV shows think that showing a character hearing a suspicious noise but choosing to dismiss it is any less ridiculous than the character just not hearing said noise?
I feel pretty certain that you would have seen this anyway if Harrow simply hadn't heard it. Besides, Harrow thinks that he's basically won at this point. This is simply him being cocky.
So he gets to turn his cane into an axe staff just for finding Amit's game piece? Show us some weird level ups.
But why is this weird? He never explains why this is a sin. He just randomly calls it weird and then moves on.
Layla acts like this is some kind of burial at sea and that she doesn't just submerge him in the scummy surface runoff that's found its way into this ancient Egyptian tomb.
Again, why the hell is this a sin? Did you want Layla to drag Mark's body out of the water and bury it? That's stupid because she's still trying to stop Harrow.
Also, Layla's seen some pretty crazy shit at this point, so wouldn't she at least think about preserving Mark's body, knowing the shenanigans Khonshu might be able to pull to revive him?
Like I just said, Layla still wants to stop Harrow, meaning that time is of the essence. Preserving a body is not a quick task. Also, I'd be thrilled to hear how you expect her to preserve a corpse with the available materials. Do you think there's a store in the tomb that sells the necessary materials?
It's pretty stupid to leave behind the one thing that could potentially lead someone back to the Ushabti in Arthur's possession. It's an entire distinct pantheon of stupidity unto itself to leave said thing with someone who has already been returned from the brink of death once before, while said person's companion is still at large. Of course, the above is made totally moot because Layla doesn't even use the damn thing to track Harrow. She just follows them out of the damn tomb and gets into the car with them.
If you're admitting that your previous sin is moot, then why did you keep it in the final video? Also, why is it a sin that Layla simply followed them? That seems like a pretty logical course of action to me.
You need to show us your soul.
The righteous ray of reckoning was omnidirectional, so why didn't it cast its periwinkle wave over Layla?
Harrow was only focusing his power on the soldiers because he was only judging them, meaning that his power didn't affect Layla.
Purple, 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 purple staff, brown suit, judging all the people rolled up at the checkpoint, judging all the people falling around the people, stealing purple from the people falling around the people, cause my evil purple steeple people.
Discount Jeremy kind of tries to sing in a video cliche.
This is the face of a good man.
Said without seeing his face.
Jesus Christ, stop taking everything too literally.
Don't do it. Layla, wait. I am the goddess Taweret.
Yeah, never mind. That's not weird at all, and in no way worthy of anything more than a slight sideways glance.
You mentioned earlier in the video that Layla has seen some pretty crazy shit and should therefore be thinking about how to resurrect Mark, but now you're acting as if she should be freaking out because of the appearance of an Egyptian goddess. Pick a lane, dude.
Layla's standing right there in the middle of these assholes and no one even notices. They may be good people according to Amit, but I'm wondering if a more strict criteria should be followed in terms of recruitment. Maybe more of a focus on situational awareness.
Okay, but most of Amit's followers have never actually seen Layla's face, meaning that they don't know what she looks like. Therefore, blending in with them is not that unrealistic.
Does this staff come with a fucking instruction manual? How does Harrow know this will open up the pyramid?
Dude, you're asking questions about the logistics of a magical staff that uses the power of an Egyptian goddess. The answer to all of these questions is, it's magic.
Why?
Harrow. That's your who, not your why.
Discount Jeremy is a grammar Nazi.
This doesn't need to happen.
Yes, please immediately cut away from the epic battle of the gods. I'm sure this showdown will hold absolutely zero interest for any of us, you rotten crypt teases.
Based on the way you constantly sin action scenes for being mindless, I'm fairly certain you would have sinned this episode if they had shown the battle.
This is all so avoidable.
Indeed. All the confusing character motivations were avoidable, and I'm happy you've come around to my point of view.
Discount Jeremy is still too stupid to understand this show. Honestly, he should just stick with children's cartoons if he can't comprehend simple things like this.
So, to trap these gods in these statues, it takes a ceremony with 5 avatars casting a spell while holding hands, but to release them from the statue, you just spike it on the ground in the end zone?
Yes. Next question.
Also, I'm pretty sure we're supposed to infer that the Ushapti has to be smashed inside this specific end zone in order to free the Kinder Surprise inside. If not, why wouldn't Harrow have destroyed it as soon as he got his hands on it? And if so, why aren't these pesky gods imprisoned in the Ushapti and then yeeted outside so there's zero chance of exactly this situation ever happening?
Oh my god, you're stupid. Yes, they can only be released in this pyramid. You asked why the Ushaptis aren't kept in other locations to avoid the gods being released, and that's dumb because Amit's Ushapti was kept in a separate location. Literally the first 4 episodes of this show were dedicated to Harrow trying to find it, you dumbass.
Your scales lack balance.
Kind of a dick thing to say to the person that just freed you. Imagine if the first thing your boss said to you when they got back from vacation was, "You suck, and you're a bad person."
So you're sitting a goddess who wants to murder people for crimes they haven't committed yet for being a dick? Do you see why that's dumb?
They lack balance because of what lies ahead of you. What lies ahead of you is your service to me.
Now imagine if your boss said, "You suck and you're a bad person because you work for me."
Discount Jeremy double dips cliche.
Also, this might be a weird question, but I'm beginning to wonder if anyone bothered to check if the scales have been properly calibrated.
Unfunny joke is unfunny.
Because you won't win against Harrow and Amit alone.
I'll take my chances.
I understand not wanting to work with Khonshu, but the alternative is taking your chances fighting a god, all alone, with only your unfounded optimism at your side.
And that's literally the exact point that the show makes itself. Why are you sinning something that the show explicitly states?
Khonshu, time has been cruel to you.
I'd say he's a fucking skeleton. But the writer should know that when I point these things out, you get 1 sin. And when you point them out but don't provide an explanation, you get 3 sins.
So you want the show to stop at its tracks and give an explanation for why Khonshu looks the way he does? That might be the dumbest sin in this entire video.
Leave here, and you can't return.
Show thinks this is an ultimate sacrifice, but they've been breaking more rules in the afterlife than Bill and Ted, so I'm pretty sure Mark just figures there's probably a workaround.
Discount Jeremy makes a pop culture reference that isn't the sin of the episode cliche.
As this is Marvel, of course, no one's powers are explained or quantified, but I think it's safe to say these 2 gods should have more in their arsenal to try before having to resort to bashing into one another.
Jesus Christ, you are yet again asking the show to stop at its tracks and give an explanation on the powers of these gods. Aren't you the same guy who constantly sins exposition? Second, why do you want their powers to be quantified? That's basically the same thing as wanting to know who's going to win the fight before it even happens. And third, you're asking the show to make this battle a big clusterfuck of magical abilities when I'm 100% certain you just sin that anyway.
I kind of remember removing sins from Marvel being brave enough to kill off a main character and then something about promising to resend them if they didn't follow through. I apologize if all that feels a bit inconsistent, but if the show is going to be vague with what is and isn't reality, I'm going to be vague with what is and isn't sinnable.
I know he removed a sin here, but he still said that the show is being vague when it's really not that vague at all. If you have more than 5 brain cells, then you can understand everything.
How the heck are we going to get to Cairo?
You forget, little world. I am still the god of the night sky!
Yes, but how does that work in the middle of the day? He's either accelerating the rotation of the Earth to make it night prematurely, or he's accelerating the passage of time itself. Either would seem to beget some unintended side effects.
Again, all of this is supernatural. When you're dealing with literal magic in a TV show, it's fair to say that the normal rules of logic don't apply.
We need to imprison Ahmed in a mortal form.
Body instead of a statue.
If a person is being used as a vessel, similar to a statue, how does this make Amit more vulnerable? To get out, Amit should just have to break the person like they broke the statue.
The implication is that Amit wouldn't be able to use his powers from within the person, at least not in order to break the person. Furthermore, trapping Amit in a human body makes her as weak as the human body, so killing her would be no different than killing a person.
We need more avatars than we have left.
My DM to James Cameron somehow makes its way into this episode.
Unfunny joke is unfunny.
Amit starts sucking up all these souls and grows super tall, which I thought was weird on its own, but then Khonshu does the same thing after eating 0 souls, so now we have no idea if the soul munching was necessary or all for show.
She was probably just munching down on some souls for fun. Why is that a sin?
Considering the needlessly aggressive deployment of this wing-sword combination as a potential hazard and public nuisance.
Sins like these are the reason why I say that TVSins has gone severely downhill. This sin is not legitimate criticism, it's not funny, and it's not satirical, so it's really just a waste of time.
This kid also stayed in harm's way to ask this question, and that's not the type of curiosity we want to encourage.
The girl was in shock from the literal battle of gods going on around her. She's not thinking clearly, dude.
This is the equivalent of trapping a few feathers. It's not even the meat of the wing. I mean, her arm. Basically, Scarlet Scarab can't wriggle out of this one because plot.
Or because there's metal trapping metal. Sure, if it was something trapping actual bird feathers, she would be able to get out. But her wings are metallic, meaning that the feathers don't move like normal feathers.
The fight between Khonshu and Amit seems mostly inconsequential. The literal god fight takes a backseat to the avatars. And while it's nice to see that Marvel is more aware of the inherent problems here than DC, the story seems to be trying to ignore it.
Didn't you just complain about the god fight being stupid because of the lack of powers? You can't sin it and then immediately contradict that sin by complaining about not seeing it. Also, what the hell did that second part of the sin even mean? It was very vague, and now I have to guess at what he means. To be fair, I'm just gonna guess that it was probably stupid, because, let's be honest, that's their bread and butter, but still.
Okay, buddy, make sure you really test the bulletproof nature of that wing before trying her legs, hands, or any other exposed body parts, yeah?
Of course, you slowed the clip down to make it seem more egregious, but in reality, this all happened within the space of a few seconds, and you failed to take reaction time into account. You're also not thinking about the adrenaline this guy has because of the fight, meaning that he's not thinking logically.
Show subverts the whole how's he going to get out of this one by not showing it at all and asking us to just assume that whatever happened was cool.
And that's the point. We are shown that there is a third personality inside Mark's body, but the story is from Mark and Steven's perspectives, and seeing as they don't know about Jake Lockley, we are only shown the aftermath of these scenes because that's also the only thing they see.
Hamid is dragging away what looks like an unconscious Khonshu. Unconscious shoe? But how does that even happen? Can gods be knocked unconscious?
If the episode shows you an unconscious god, why would you ask if a god can be knocked unconscious? The episode is literally answering your question as you ask it.
Harrow, I know how to stop Amit.
That probably wouldn't bother Layla. Judging by the way Harrow's neck stays perfectly straight as Mark lifts him, I'm fairly certain rigor mortis has already set in.
What the hell is this sin? Is he trying to say that Harrow's head should be flopping around? Cause that's stupid, seeing as this scene isn't fake and that's just Ethan Hawke being lifted up, meaning that it's not unrealistic at all.
Yeah, I don't think you know as much as you think you do.
Who? Me? Oh no, I know exactly what's going on. I have a firm grasp on what's real and what's actually just in Mark, Steven, or Mystery Player number 3's head.
Can you please just fucking skip?
I'd rather go save the world.
Saying this after you've decided to no longer be the Moon Knight is like taking your glass-filled shoes off after you've already suffered massive blood loss.
What? You do realize that Mark agreed to be the Moon Knight until they stopped Amit, right? With that in mind, this sin makes no sense.
Meet my friend, Jake Lockley.
Hoy te toca perder.
Show does not end with a Moon Knight will return, leaving me with so many unanswered questions. Why are Mark and Steven unaware of Oscar the Grouch? Is he another coping mechanism created by Mark? If so, why is he speaking Italian? Why did the Egyptian gods intervene with Amet's plans but not Thanos?
I understand that you have a lot of questions, and that's fine. But that doesn't mean there's sins. Just because you don't understand something yet doesn't mean you never will.
Hey, look at there. Didn't I tell you it was finger-licking good?
Yes? Hello, Doctor. I'm from Wessex.